Hello, I'm Sally Johnson, and I am a lifelong member of Glen Oak Christian Church. I am here today to talk to you about the CWF, the Christian Women's Fellowship of Glen Oak Christian Church. But before I do that, I wanted to tell you a little bit about my history. I have been a member, I was carried in actually by my parents as an infant. My mother and my grandparents had been members. In fact, my grandparents were part of the founding fathers of the original little Sunday school. My parents were very active in the church, as were my brother and I. And we also raised our children in the church, even though we moved out of town when we first got married. We lived out of town for 50-some years, but we still come to Glen Oak because it's the best thing on the East Bluff, I believe. The women of Glen Oak Christian Church have been an active presence on the East Bluff even as the little church on the corner was just beginning. We must realize that in that time and for many years thereafter, women had no voice or presence in the church on the board or any other office. Even as they were granted a place in the diaconate, their job was to just do the communion trays, clean the glasses, shine the trays. It wasn't until the late 70s, early 80s, that women were invited to participate in the full duties as either a deacon or an elder. The first formal group of women was called the Women's Missionary Society. They were the energy behind the church's social life and did an immense amount of fundraising for the mission work within as well as outside the church. There were box suppers. Each lady would make a delicious meal and pack it up in a fancy box. The men would then bid on the box of their choice, getting to dine at the tables with whomever had cooked the meal. Lots of fun. And it also put a little money in the Missionary Society's treasury. Jitney suppers. Dishes cooked by the women cost 5 cents a spoonful to sample. Most events were open to everyone, and so the church grew. Ice cream socials on the church lawn with homemade ice cream pies, cakes, and cookies. The Disciples Church, in answer to the pleas from the women in the Disciples of Christ congregations, eventually set up guidelines for a Christian Women's Fellowship. In 1947, Maybelle Slater was elected president of the very first Christian Women's Fellowship at Glen Oak Christian Church. The organization consisted of a board of directors, a president, vice president, recording secretary, and on down the line, even to bereavements, study, weddings, and receptions. Each woman who was a member of the church was also a member of CWF, and they were assigned to a circle. The criteria for circle assignments was varied and depended on when the women could attend. Not many women worked outside of the home, so most of the meetings were during the day, either in the afternoon. There was one circle that during the peak of the membership met in the morning so that they had a babysitter. They met at the church. There were also 2 evening circles for those who actually did work and could not come during the day. There was a monthly meeting of the CWF board as well as a meeting of the entire membership. The combined meeting generally included a luncheon or dessert and a program. The many fundraisers performed throughout the years by these dedicated women have funded projects within the church while giving to projects and Christian organizations in a very generous outreach program. The all-church rummage sale and the Bakeless Bake Sale have been the biggest fundraisers, both of which have been done for nearly 50 years. In the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, there was also either a mother-daughter or father-son banquet or a mother-son, father-daughter banquet. Everyone dressed up and using their very best manners. Annual turkey dinners with the public invited were always a huge success. Glen Oak ladies are, and always have been, excellent cooks. So it's no wonder that most of the fellowship involving the women and the church as a whole has been accompanied by delicious food. Tasting suppers were held for several years during the 1970s. Women brought a dish to share and everyone got just a taste, a teaspoonful, a sampling of the dishes they wished to try. Recipe books were compiled of the recipes shared and then sold as a fundraiser. This gave the ladies an idea, and following that for several years and for many years afterwards, there were cookbooks done within the church. 5 large favorite recipe cookbooks have been published and used as fundraisers. As life got busier, the church was no longer the focus of all the social events. More and more women worked outside of the home, and fewer women had the time for afternoon circle meetings, let alone the monthly CWF luncheon. As the attendance dwindled, so did the projects. In the late 1990s, CWF began having an annual afternoon tea. This was presented for 7 to 8 years. Now we still do 2 large fundraisers each year, the rummage sale in the spring and the Bakeless Bake Sale in the fall. We still fund many projects as needed around the church and have continued our monthly outreach giving. Each December for the past several years, a holiday luncheon featuring recipes from our various cookbooks is held for approximately 50 guests. The traditional program has included the first grade students from Glen Oak Learning Center. They walk to the church, surrounding the hall and singing their Christmas performance songs. Even the huge outreach snack pack program, begun 8 years ago at Glen Oak Christian Church, has been supported by the women of the CWF. They were among the first to volunteer their time and energy to assist in packing. Virtually every ministry of the church is impacted by the women of the Christian Women's Fellowship. Until last March, when almost all activity ceased due to the pandemic, we were still providing homemade bereavement dinners for the families of the deceased within the church. Hot breakfasts were being provided each Sunday morning before Sunday school for those children and adults needing a hot meal. Thursday evenings brought 60 to 90 neighborhood adults and children to the church for fellowship and a delicious meal offered by the ladies of the CWF. We don't know what the future will bring or how it will look, but the CWF of Glen Oak Christian Church will definitely be a part of it. So, until further notice, you are welcome to join us for our monthly Zoom circle meetings.